Facing South Florida with Jim DeFeeti.
Good morning and welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Elliot Rodriguez in for Jim DeFeeti. The fight for marriage equality rages on in the Florida Keys. It's been a roller coaster ride the past few weeks for gay marriage advocates. It began when a circuit judge ruled that Florida's ban on same-sex marriage is unconstitutional and that marriage licenses could be issued in Monroe County beginning this past Tuesday.
Aaron and Lee, the entire state of Florida's eyes are upon you. How does that feel?
This is not how Aaron Huntsman and Lee Jones planned to start their day this past Tuesday.
We were actually going to get married right on this spot where we are right now, so it's kind of ironic we're back here. And
just gives us more time planning.
Yeah.
The Key West couple's legal fight with the state is escalating after a judge ruled in their favor, overturning Florida's voter-approved constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriage. That ruling was put on hold to allow for an appeal. But instead of celebrating marriages Tuesday, people came out to protest. They're signing petitions urging the state to drop its opposition, something that's not likely to happen.
The voters of the state decided that marriage would be between a man and woman, traditional marriage. It's gone to the courts. The courts will end up deciding.
Now, that is Governor Rick Scott. We're going to talk about his position on this in a moment. Joining me this morning are Aaron Huntsman and Lee Jones and their attorney, Bernadette Restivo. And thank you, the three of you, for being here. I know you came up from Key West. Thank you very much. Aaron and Lee, let me ask you both first, what kind of an emotional roller coaster has this been for you guys? First of all, thinking that we're going to be able to get married, and then getting there and finding out you weren't be able to do it.
We were hoping to, but in the long run, we knew she was probably going to file the appeal and put a stay on it.
How long have you guys been together, and how long have you been hoping to be able to get married in Florida?
June 10th marked our 11th year anniversary together, and we wanted to get married pretty much the whole time. It's just been impossible to do so far.
And you still have hope that you'll be able to do it, Aaron?
It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time, and we're waiting patiently, taking it minute by minute.
And what do you tell people who say, well, it's the law in Florida, it was a constitutional amendment that was passed by the voters, and that's the will of the voters in Florida?
You know, the majority is not to rule over the minority. It's like a mob rule, and it's not right. We're the last to have our civil rights fully recognized, and it's just a matter of time before probably the Florida Supreme Court, if not the Supreme Court, will agree with us.
Lee, what do you tell people that say, well, that's the law, sorry?
It's law in Florida. It's through their Constitution, not through the Constitution of the United States. The state Constitution cannot outweigh the United States Constitution.
Bernadette, talk to us about the legal strategy here. First, you had that ruling in your favor by the judge in the Keys. Then there was a stay. What's your next step?
Well, just this past week, we asked the 3rd District Court of Appeals to lift the stay, and they very quickly denied us. On Monday, tomorrow,
yes,
we will be filing a motion with the 3rd District Court of Appeals asking that they certify this case directly to the Florida Supreme Court instead of keeping it themselves and issuing an opinion. Let's send it directly to the Florida Supreme Court.
Do you see this as a case that rightfully belongs in the Florida Supreme Court?
Absolutely. This procedure that we're going to use is made especially for a case like this. It's an issue of grave importance. It affects a large number of people. It affects more than just South Florida. It fits all the criteria. This case has to go to the Florida Supreme Court, so let's just go now.
What is your argument, again, when people say, well, you know, Florida voters had a choice on this, and they decided on traditional marriage between a man and a woman?
And that's just not a good argument. The right to marry the person of your choice has already been determined to be a fundamental right. You can't take someone's fundamental right and put it to the vote of the people. It's unconstitutional. The United States Supreme Court's already come out with that line of logic in so many other of our civil rights cases that you just don't put someone's liberty or their rights like this to the vote of other people, especially when there's such a historical trend of animosity toward this particular group.
I want to ask you guys about some of the reaction that you have gotten from people who say, no, you should not be allowed to marry and the effect it's had on you. Tell us about that.
We've been called to be dragged out into the streets and stoned. We've been called bad words like the F word. I'm not even going to say.
Is this mostly online, on the internet?
A lot of it's online, but I have had people, yelling on Duval Street. You can obviously tell that they are tourists because the locals in the community totally support this, whether you are straight, gay, or transgender.
Lee, does that ever make you think twice about, is this worth it?
Oh no, it's absolutely worth it, no matter what.
What's your reaction, Bernadette, when you hear Governor Scott say that he is in favor of traditional marriage? And to his credit, he's always said that he's in favor of traditional marriage between a man and a woman. The voters knew that. And then he says at the same time, I'm against discrimination. What goes through your mind when you hear that?
I guess the term silly season. This is the political season. It's very difficult for politicians and elected officials to try to craft their message to appease both sides. They're going to either have to make a definitive statement or just stay out of it. Those lawyers, whether it's Pam Bondi or Rick Scott, Charlie Crist, all of those elected officials, they know, every practicing attorney knows, as it's been quoted in federal courts before, an unconstitutional law cannot stand simply because it's been voted on by a majority of the people.
And I know there have been petitions asking Attorney General Pam Bondi not to defend this amendment, but isn't it her job as the Attorney General to do just that?
Well, she actually did us a favor for the entire state of Florida to appeal this case, because a decision that came out of Monroe County really only had authority in Monroe County. By her taking it to an appeal is going to now apply this favorable ruling to the entire state of Florida. So dropping the appeal is not the right thing, but I would ask her to join us in the certification of this case and go with us to the Supreme Court without putting up a fight. Let's save the taxpayers' dollars. Let's save the judicial resources. Let's get the decision one way or another, whether it's in their favor or in our opponent's favor. But let's get it done.
Lee and Aaron, what message would you have finally for people, who are maybe on the fence about this, on why this law in Florida, this amendment in Florida needs to be overturned?
So many people are being hurt by this. They're ashamed of themselves. We've seen a high suicide rate. It needs to change so we're all treated equal as one.
Lee, how do you feel about it?
That's pretty much the same.
And you have that date in mind when down in the future when you think this is going to happen?
We are planning. We're taking it day by day again, but we are going to be married, and it's going to happen right on the steps of City Hall in Key West. So we're taking it one step.
And again, on Monday, you'll be in the 3rd District Court of Appeals asking that this go to the Florida Supreme Court.
Yes, that's correct. That's
Okay.
where it needs to go.
And we'll be there covering that. Thank you all very much. Aaron Huntsman, Lee Jones, and Bernadette Restivo, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
I'm Facing South Florida. All right, up next, Florida's prison inmate.